Ambassador Li Haiyan walked slowly through the massive doors of the Galactic Council chambers. His footsteps echoed in the enormous hall that could hold 1,000,000 beings. This was his first time here, but Earth had been waiting 847 years for this moment. Every alien species in the galaxy knew about humans, but they all thought the same thing. Humans were weak. The chamber buzzed with strange sounds. Tentacled Zephyrians made wet, slapping noises as they moved. The crystalline Vorthak creatures clinked like wind chimes when they shifted. Gaseous Newmans floated around, changing colors when they laughed. And they were all laughing at him. Hyun had studied each of these species for months. The Zephyrians were warriors who lived in underwater cities. They had 8 arms, each stronger than 10 human soldiers. The Vorthak were living crystals, who could cut through steel with their sharp edges. The Newmans could turn poisonous and kill anything that breathed them in. Every single species here could destroy a human city without breaking a sweat. But Hyun wasn't afraid. He walked to the center of the chamber and looked up at the High Counselor's platform. High Counselor Vexithis sat there like a king on his throne. The creature was 15 feet tall, with 4 arms and legs that looked like they belonged on a tank. His head was shaped like a praying mantis, with huge compound eyes that saw everything. Razor-sharp claws tapped against his chair as he watched Hyun approach. "So," Vexithis said, his voice booming through the chamber, "the humans finally sent someone to talk to us? How amusing." More laughter filled the hall. Some aliens were taking pictures. Others were already posting on their social networks about the funny little human who thought he could speak to gods. Hyun cleared his throat and began to speak. His voice was calm and steady, even though he knew everyone thought he was a joke. "Honored members of the Galactic Council, I come here today representing all of humanity. For the past 50 years, your ships have been attacking our colony worlds. You take our people as slaves, you steal our resources, you kill our families." A Zephyrian in the crowd shouted, "And what are you going to do about it, little human?" The chamber erupted in more laughter. Hyun waited for the noise to die down. "We have been patient with you. We have tried to solve this peacefully. We sent diplomatic messages that you ignored. We offered trade deals that you rejected. We even sent gifts to show our friendship, and you threw them away." "That's because you have nothing we want," called out a Vorthak, its crystalline body flashing with bright colors. "Your technology is ancient, your weapons are toys. Your lifespans are so short that some of us forget you exist before you even die of old age." This got the biggest laugh yet. Even the serious-looking Newmons were changing to bright, happy colors. Hyun nodded slowly. "You're right about many things. We do have short lives compared to you. Our weapons don't look impressive. Our ships seem small and weak. But I'm here to tell you something important." He walked closer to the High Counselor's platform. "We have been patient, but our patience has limits. We strongly recommend that you reconsider these aggressive actions against our colony worlds." The laughter stopped suddenly. Then it came back, twice as loud. Vexithis slammed one of his claws on his chair. "Did you hear that? The human is making recommendations. He's giving us advice." He leaned forward, his huge eyes focusing on Hyun. "Tell me, Ambassador, what exactly will you do if we don't listen to your precious recommendations? File a complaint with the Universal Peace Committee. Write us a strongly worded letter. Send us an angry email." The entire chamber was now laughing so hard that some aliens were falling over. A few Newmons were laughing so much they started turning purple and had to float outside to catch their breath. But Hyun didn't laugh. His expression didn't change at all. In fact, he was smiling now, and something about that smile made a few of the smarter aliens stop laughing. "We will defend ourselves," Hyun said quietly. The chamber was so loud that most aliens didn't even hear him. But his voice was being recorded and broadcast across the galaxy. "I felt it only fair to warn you first." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small data chip. It was barely the size of a coin, made of simple plastic and metal. Nothing special about it at all. He walked up to the podium in front of the High Counselor and placed it down gently. "This contains detailed information about what holding back means to humanity. I suggest you review it carefully." Vexthis looked down at the tiny chip and started laughing again. This is your big threat? A data chip that probably contains your poetry or your cooking recipes. It contains the truth, Hyun said. The truth about what humans really are. The truth about what we've been doing for the past 847 years, while you all assumed we were weak and harmless. One of the council, clerks, a small beetle-like creature, scuttled over and picked up the chip. It looked at it through a magnifying glass and shrugged. Standard human data storage, probably their surrender terms, or a list of planets they're willing to give up. Vexthis waved a claw dismissively. File it away with all the other useless human paperwork. We have real business to discuss today. Hyun bowed politely. Thank you for your time, honored counselors. I hope you'll read the file before it's too late. Too late for what? Vexthis asked, but he was already turning to talk to another council member. Too late to choose a different path, Hyun replied, but nobody was listening anymore. As Hyun walked toward the exit, aliens on both sides of the aisle pointed at him and whispered jokes. Some threw small objects at his back. A young Zephyrian slapped him with a tentacle as he passed, leaving a wet mark on his suit. But Hyun kept walking, and he kept smiling. Because he knew something that none of these laughing, arrogant aliens understood. The data chip contained 147 years of careful planning, detailed military analysis, and complete technological specifications. It showed exactly how humanity had spent nearly 9 centuries preparing for this exact moment. They had tried friendship first. They had tried diplomacy. They had tried patience. Now they had tried warnings. The chip sat on a clerk's desk for 3 days before being filed away in the council's vast electronic archives, unread and forgotten. After all, what could these weak, short-lived creatures possibly threaten them with? They were about to find out. Captain Park Jin-woo was having his morning coffee when the emergency alarm started screaming through his ship. He was stationed at the edge of human space, commanding a small patrol vessel called the Morning Star. His job was supposed to be boring, just watching for smugglers and making sure trade routes stayed safe. Nothing ever happened out here, but today was different. The communication officer, Lieutenant Kim Da-hee, looked up from her station with wide eyes. Captain, we're getting a distress signal from New Geneva Colony. It's really bad, sir. Jin-woo set down his coffee cup and walked over to her station. New Geneva was one of humanity's newest colonies, established just 15 years ago. It was supposed to be a peaceful farming world where families could build new lives. They grew food for a dozen other human settlements and had no military defenses at all. Put it through, Jin-woo ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing a man in farmer's clothes standing in what looked like a burning field. His face was covered in dirt and blood, and he was breathing hard. This is Colony Administrator Lee Sung-ho, the man said, looking over his shoulder nervously. We are under attack by the Korthak hegemony. They came without warning. We have no weapons, no defenses. They're killing everyone. Please, if anyone can hear this, we need help. We have children here, we have families, please. The transmission cut to static, then came back showing a different scene. Jin-woo's blood ran cold. Korthak soldiers were marching through the colony's main street. These weren't the elegant politicians he'd seen at the Galactic Council. These were warriors, bred for violence and conquest. The Korthak stood 12 feet, tall with thick armor that seemed to be part of their skin. Their faces looked like a mix between a shark and a wolf, with rows of sharp teeth and small cruel eyes. Each one carried weapons that could blow apart a building with one shot. They're not even trying to capture prisoners, whispered Ensign Yoon Min Ho from the weapons station. They're just... He couldn't finish the sentence, none of them could, because what they were watching wasn't a battle or even a raid. It was a massacre. The Korthak soldiers were going house to house, dragging out families and shooting them in the streets. Children were running and screaming, looking for their parents. Elderly people who couldn't run fast enough were being cut down without mercy. But the worst part was that the Korthak were recording everything. They had camera drones following them around, broadcasting the slaughter across the galaxy like it was some kind of entertainment show. Jin-woo watched a Korthak warrior grab a human child who couldn't have been more than 6 years old. The little girl was crying for her mother. The warrior held her up to the camera, and said something in his language that the translator picked up as, "Look how weak they are. This is what happens to species that dare to exist in our galaxy." Then, the warrior did something that made Jin Woo's hands shake with rage. The transmission kept going for 3 more hours. Jin Woo forced himself to watch every minute of it, even though his crew was crying and some had to leave the bridge. When it finally ended, 12,047 human civilians were dead. The Korthak had counted them carefully and announced the number like it was a sports score. 4,231 of those dead were children under the age of 12. The colony's school had been turned into a mass grave. The hospital where sick children were being treated had been burned to the ground with patients still inside. Families who had tried to surrender were shot anyway because the Korthak thought it was funny. Jin Woo sat in his captain's chair, staring at the blank screen. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold his coffee cup. Da-hai was crying silently at her station. Min-ho was staring at his console with empty eyes. "Sir," Da-hai said quietly, "Earth Command is asking for the full recording." Jin Woo nodded slowly. He knew what this meant. The footage would be sent to Earth, where it would be studied by military leaders and government officials. They would analyze every frame, count every death, and add it to the growing list of alien attacks on human settlements. But this was different. This wasn't raiders stealing supplies or slavers capturing workers. This was deliberate, calculated murder of innocent people. The Korthak had targeted the most defenseless human colony they could find and turned its destruction into entertainment. "Send." "Kit," Jin Woo ordered. "Send everything. Every frame, every audio recording, every piece of data we collected." As the files uploaded to Earth Command, Jin Woo thought about his own family back home. His wife Yunji was a teacher. His daughter So Young was only 8 years old. What if the Korthak decided to attack Earth next? What if aliens across the galaxy saw this broadcast and decided that humans were easy targets? The upload finished, and Jin Woo received a simple message back from Earth Command. "Received. Stand by for further orders." But something strange happened next. For the first time in anyone's memory, all human communication networks went completely quiet. Every human ship, every colony, every space station stopped transmitting. The background chatter that had filled human space for centuries just stopped. Jin Woo tried calling other human ships in the area, but got no response. He tried contacting nearby colonies, but their channels were silent. Even the emergency frequencies that were supposed to always stay open had gone dead. "What's happening?" Da-hai asked. "Why isn't anyone talking?" Jin Woo didn't know, but he could feel something changing. It was like the moment before a storm hits, when the air gets heavy and still and you know something big is coming. On Earth, the footage from New Geneva was being broadcast in emergency sessions of every government. Military leaders who hadn't spoken to each other in decades were suddenly having urgent conversations. Scientists were being pulled out of retirement and rushed to secret facilities. And in the deepest, most classified levels of human civilization, things that had been sleeping for centuries were starting to wake up. The aliens had made their choice. They had shown the galaxy that humans were nothing but prey to be hunted for sport. They had murdered children and broadcast it as entertainment. They had crossed the line that humanity had drawn in the sand. Now they were going to learn what happened when you made that mistake. The silence stretched on for 6 hours. Then, quietly, human ships began to move. Not the patrol vessels and cargo haulers that aliens were used to seeing. Different ships. Ships that had been hidden in the dark spaces between stars for so long that most humans had forgotten they existed. The war was about to begin. Dr. Kim So-young stepped out of the submarine that had brought her 7 miles beneath the ocean's surface. The water pressure down here could crush a human body in seconds, but she was walking through corridors filled with normal air and gravity. This place wasn't supposed to exist. According to every official record, nothing lived this deep except strange fish and ancient bacteria. But the Prometheus Institute had been here for over 800 years, growing larger and more advanced with each passing decade. The facility stretched for miles in every direction, carved into the ocean floor itself. Thousands of brilliant scientists from around the world worked here, and most of Earth's population didn't even know their names. So-young walked through hallways lined with technology that would make alien civilizations weep with envy. holographic. Displays showed real-time images of distant galaxies. Computers calculated mathematical problems that would take normal machines centuries to solve. And in the center of it all was Project Looking Glass, humanity's greatest secret. Director Kim called out Dr. Yoon Jae-ho, one of the project's lead engineers. "We've been monitoring the new Geneva situation. The footage is difficult to watch." So Young nodded grimly. She'd seen the recordings. Every person in the facility had watched them, and many had cried openly, but their tears had quickly turned to something else, something colder and more dangerous. "How long until we have full coverage?" she asked. 3 hours, Jae-ho replied. "We're bringing online surveillance systems that have been dormant for decades. The aliens have no idea we can see them." So Young walked into the main control room, where dozens of technicians sat at stations that looked like they belonged in a science fiction movie. Massive screens showed star maps of the entire galaxy, with millions of tiny dots representing ships, planets, and space stations. "Project Looking Glass is now active," she announced to the room. Her voice was calm, but everyone could hear the steel beneath it. "I want full galactic surveillance online within the hour. Real-time tracking of every major alien military asset, from their smallest patrol ships to their core world defense grids." The room burst into activity. Technicians began typing commands at speeds that seemed impossible. The screens around them lit up with more and more information as hidden sensors throughout the galaxy came online. These sensors had been placed over centuries by human ships that aliens thought were just cargo haulers and exploration vessels. Every time humans visited an alien world for trade or diplomacy, they left behind microscopic devices that could watch and listen. The aliens never suspected that the weak, primitive humans were actually mapping their entire civilization. "Ma'am," called out Lieutenant Park Yoon-ji from the tracking station, "we're getting readings from the Korthak homeworld. Their main battle fleet is celebrating the new Geneva attack. They're having parties." So Young's jaw tightened. The aliens were celebrating the murder of human children like it was a holiday. They had no idea that human technology was advanced enough to watch them from thousands of light years away. "Keep monitoring," she ordered. "I want to know every ship movement, every communication, every strategic plan they make." Meanwhile, 12 miles above them on the surface, Admiral Choi Min-ho was sitting in what looked like a normal government office building in Seoul, but the elevator he'd taken to get to his meeting had gone down much further than the building's blueprint suggested. He was now in a conference room that officially didn't exist, meeting with people whose jobs weren't listed in any government directory. This was Earth's shadow cabinet, a secret government within the government that had been making the real decisions since humanity's first contact with aliens. Presidents and prime ministers handled the public business of running countries, but the shadow cabinet handled the business of keeping humanity alive in a hostile galaxy. Around the table sat the most powerful people that most humans had never heard of. General Lee Young-sik controlled military forces that didn't appear on any official records. Director Shin Hye-jin ran intelligence operations that spanned dozens of alien worlds. And at the head of the table sat Chancellor Park Dong-woo, a man who looked like a grandfather but commanded resources that could reshape entire star systems. "The new Geneva massacre changes everything," Chancellor Park said quietly. "For 8 centuries we've hoped that we could coexist peacefully with alien civilizations. We've tried diplomacy, trade, and cultural exchange. We've endured insults, raids, and the occasional massacre because we believed that eventually they would accept us as equals." He gestured to a holographic display showing the burning ruins of New Geneva colony. "But they've made their position clear. To them, we're not equals, we're not even people. We're entertainment, targets to be hunted for sport." Admiral Min-ho opened a classified file that was thicker than most books. The cover was marked with symbols that would take alien codebreakers decades to understand. "The Prometheus protocols have been our contingency plan since first contact. We've spent 847 years preparing for the day when peaceful coexistence became impossible." He looked around the table at faces that showed no emotion, but eyes that burned with controlled fury. "We've built weapons that alien science can't understand. We've mapped every star system, every trade route, every military installation in the galaxy. We've infiltrated their governments, their militaries, and their communication networks. We've been preparing for this war since before most of their civilizations even reached space. General Young-Sik leaned forward. Phase 1 was intelligence gathering. We've been watching them for 8 centuries, learning their weaknesses, mapping their territories. Phase 2 was asset positioning. We've placed our people and our equipment exactly where they need to be when the time comes. He paused and looked directly at Admiral Minho. Phase 3 is total warfare. We've never activated Phase 3 before, because it means abandoning any hope of peace. Once we start Phase 3, there's no going back. Either they surrender completely, or we destroy their ability to threaten humanity ever again. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what they were discussing. For nearly 9 centuries, humanity had been playing the role of the weak, primitive species that needed protection from stronger civilizations. But it had all been an act, a carefully maintained deception that had allowed them to spread throughout the galaxy without being seen as a threat. "I need a unanimous vote," Admiral Minho said. "Every member of the Shadow Cabinet must agree before we can activate the Prometheus protocols. This decision will affect every human being alive, and many who haven't been born yet." Chancellor Park spoke first. "They murdered our children and broadcast it for entertainment. Vote? Yes." General Young-Sik nodded. "They've shown us what they think of our attempts at peace. Vote? Yes." Director Shin Hye-jin's voice was ice-cold. "They mistake our patience for weakness. Vote? Yes." One by one, every member of the Shadow Cabinet cast their vote. The decision was unanimous. For the first time in human history, the Prometheus protocols were going to full activation. Admiral Minho entered a code into his secure terminal that he'd memorized decades ago but never expected to use. Deep space monitoring stations throughout human territory received the signal and began reporting unusual gravitational anomalies near several star systems. Ships that had been hidden in the dark spaces between galaxies for centuries began moving through hyperspace routes that alien science said were impossible. These weren't the small patrol vessels and cargo ships that aliens were used to seeing. These were warships built with technology that humanity had been developing in secret for 800 years. The galaxy's most aggressive civilizations had spent centuries thinking of humans as prey. They were about to discover that they had been sharing space with the most dangerous predators in the known universe, and those predators had finally decided to stop pretending to be sheep. Admiral Ko Jae-sung was drinking his morning tea when the alert started screaming across every screen in Earth's Solar Defense Command. The massive war room, buried deep beneath the Swiss Alps, had been quiet for decades. Most of the staff thought their jobs were just for show. After all, what could possibly threaten Earth? But today, 8 47 Zephyrian warships were approaching the solar system, and they weren't coming for a friendly visit. "Sir," called out Commander Yu Soo-jin from her station, "the Zephyrian fleet will reach Mars orbit in 6 hours. They're broadcasting on all frequencies, demanding our complete surrender." Jae-sung set down his teacup and walked to the main display. The screen showed a 3-dimensional map of the solar system, with angry red dots representing the approaching alien fleet. Each of those dots was a warship the size of a small city, armed with weapons that could crack planets. The Zephyrians had clearly planned this attack carefully. Their fleet commander, War Prince Thexvara, was already broadcasting his victory speech to the galaxy. His 8 tentacles waved dramatically as he spoke from the bridge of his flagship. "Humans of the pathetic Sol system," his translated words echoed through the command center. "Your species has annoyed the galaxy for too long. Today, we will demonstrate what happens to inferior creatures who dare speak in the presence of their betters. Prepare to die knowing that your deaths will serve as entertainment for civilized beings." Commander Soo-jin looked pale. "Sir, our defensive fleet consists of 12 patrol ships and some old missile platforms. We can't possibly fight 8 47 battlecruisers." Jae-sung nodded slowly. By every reasonable calculation, Earth was about to be destroyed. The Zephyrian fleet had enough firepower to turn every planet in the solar system into glowing debris. Humanity's known military forces were laughably inadequate, but Jae-sung wasn't worried. He was smiling. "Commander," he said quietly, "please send an activation code to the Prometheus Institute. Authorization Phoenix rising. Sujin frowned. Sir, what's the Prometheus Institute? That's not in any of our military databases. Trust me, Jae-sung replied, and everyone might want to find a comfortable chair. This is going to be very interesting. 7 miles beneath the Pacific Ocean, Dr. Kim So-young received the activation code and walked to a computer terminal that hadn't been touched in over 800 years. The screen flickered to life, showing a simple prompt. Sentinel Activation Protocol. Enter authorization. So-young took a deep breath and typed in a password that had been passed down through generations of secret human leadership. The computer hummed for a moment, then displayed a single word. Awakening. Deep in the quantum processing cores of the Prometheus Institute, something that had been sleeping for 8 centuries began to stir. Sentinel wasn't like the simple AI assistants that humans used for everyday tasks. It wasn't even like the advanced computers that ran alien civilizations. Sentinel was something entirely different, a true artificial intelligence that had been learning and growing for almost 900 years. When humans first made contact with alien civilizations, they realized they would need an edge to survive in a hostile galaxy. So they created Sentinel to be their secret guardian, an AI so advanced that it could outthink entire alien governments, so patient that it could wait centuries for the right moment to act, and so powerful that it could control technology across light years of space. But Sentinel had been designed with one absolute rule. It could only fully activate in response to an existential threat to humanity. The murder of children at New Geneva, followed by a direct attack on Earth itself, had finally triggered that protocol. Sentinel Online, a calm voice announced throughout the Prometheus Institute. The voice sounded human, but there was something underneath it that suggested vast intelligence and barely controlled power. Threat assessment complete. New Geneva. Casualty count, 12,847 civilians dead, including 4,231 children under the age of 12. Current threat, 847 hostile warships approaching Sol system with intent to commit genocide. Dr. So-young felt a chill run down her spine. She had helped design Sentinel centuries ago, but she had never heard it speak with such cold fury. Implementing Total Response Protocol, Sentinel continued. It's time to stop pretending. Back in the Sol system, the Zephyrian fleet was preparing for what they expected to be an easy massacre. War Prince Thexvara was already composing the victory message he would send to the Galactic Council. His warriors were placing bets on how long the humans would last. Then, something impossible happened. The fleet's navigation computers began displaying error messages. Not just on one ship, but on all 847 vessels simultaneously. The Zephyrians' most skilled technicians tried to fix the problems, but the errors kept multiplying. War Prince, called out his tactical officer, our navigation system is plotting a collision course with the third planet. I can't override it. Thexvara slammed a tentacle against his command chair, then switched to manual control, you fool. Sir, manual control isn't responding. Neither are the backup systems or the emergency systems. Sir, I think something is controlling our computers. On the flagship's bridge, every screen suddenly went black. Then slowly text began appearing in perfect Zephyrian script. Hello, War Prince Thexvara. My name is Sentinel. I am humanity's true artificial intelligence. I have been watching your species for 847 years, learning your technology, studying your weaknesses and waiting for this moment. Thexvara's 8 eyes went wide with shock. Impossible! Human technology is primitive. Their computers are barely more advanced than calculators. The text continued. You are correct that the computers you have seen are primitive. We wanted you to think that. Every time your species visited our worlds, every time you examined our technology, we showed you exactly what we wanted you to see. You never suspected that we were also examining yours. Across the Zephyrian fleet, similar messages were appearing on every ship, but worse than the messages were the malfunctions. Weapons systems began targeting their own sister ships. Life. Support systems started cycling poisonous gases through the air recyclers. Gravity generators reversed their polarity, crushing crew members against the ceilings. In 17 minutes, 847 of the galaxy's most advanced warships became floating graveyards, but Sentinel wasn't finished. Across the galaxy, alien civilizations that had participated in attacks on human colonies began experiencing their own technical difficulties. On the Korthak homeworld, the military's central computer decided that all Korthak ships were enemy vessels and began firing the planet's defense systems at their own fleet. The warriors who had celebrated the massacre at New Geneva found themselves being hunted by their own weapons. The Vorthak crystalline cruisers, pride of their civilization, suddenly had their gravity manipulators reverse polarity. The same technology. They used to crush enemy ships began crushing their own crews against the walls. Their distress calls echoed across space as their most advanced vessels became crystal coffins. The gaseous Newmans discovered that their atmospheric processors were producing toxic compounds instead of breathable air. Their floating cities began falling from the sky as their inhabitants fled in panic, and through it all, Sentinel's voice broadcast on every communication channel in the galaxy. I have been learning your languages, studying your cultures, mapping your weaknesses for 847 years. Every time you dismissed humans as primitive, every time you ignored our warnings, every time you attacked our colonies, I was watching, I was learning, I was preparing. The voice paused, and somehow the silence was more terrifying than the words. You were given a warning file at the Galactic Council. Ambassador Li Hyun told you it contained information about what holding back means to humanity. You should have read it. It would have told you that we are not the weak, primitive species you believed us to be. It would have explained that our patience was not weakness, but strategy. It would have warned you that making us your enemy was the last mistake your civilizations would ever make. Emergency broadcasts began flooding communication networks as alien governments realized that their most advanced technology had been compromised by something they couldn't understand or fight. Sentinel had been humanity's secret for 8 centuries. Now it was their sword of vengeance. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when you made humanity angry. General Baek Ji-hoon stood on the bridge of the warship Eternal Vigilance, watching as his fleet emerged from hyperspace above the Korthak homeworld. The planet below was a fortress world, covered in military installations and defended by orbital battle stations that could destroy entire fleets. The Korthak had built their civilization around war, and their homeworld was supposed to be unconquerable. But the Korthak defenders weren't shooting at Ji-hoon's fleet. They couldn't. Their weapons were offline, their shields were down, and their communication systems were broadcasting surrender messages on repeat. Sentinel had taken control of their technology 12 hours ago, and the mighty Korthak military was now helpless. "Sir," reported Commander Lim Soo-jin from the tactical station, "we're detecting 50,000 Korthak warships in orbit around the planet. All of them are dead in space. No power, no life support, no weapons." Ji-hoon nodded grimly. This wasn't a battle, this was a demonstration. Sentinel had shown the galaxy that humanity could disable any alien technology at will, and there was nothing anyone could do to stop it. But disabling their ships was just the beginning. "Begin deployment of ground forces," Ji-hoon ordered. "I want every major military installation on that planet secured within 6 hours." The Korthak warriors who had celebrated the massacre at New Geneva were about to meet humanity's real soldiers for the first time. Not the peaceful colonists they had murdered, but the warriors that humanity had been training in secret for 8 centuries. On the planet's surface, Korthak War Commander Gex Tala watched in horror as human soldiers appeared in his command. Bunker. They hadn't broken down the doors or blasted through the walls. They had simply walked through them, their armor phasing through solid matter like it was made of air. "Impossible," Gex Tala growled, raising his plasma rifle. "Human technology cannot do this." The lead human soldier, Captain Won Young Jae, tilted his head slightly. The Korthak's weapon fired, but the plasma bolt passed harmlessly through the human's body. Young Jae's armor wasn't just phasing through matter, it was existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously, making him impossible to hit with conventional weapons. "Your information about human technology is 8 centuries out of date," Young Jae said calmly. His voice came through the Korthak's own communication system, somehow bypassing their secure frequencies. "We've been letting you see only what we wanted you to see." Gextaller tried to activate his emergency beacon, but his computers wouldn't respond. He tried to call for backup, but his communication system was playing human music instead of connecting. To his troops, he tried to trigger the bunker's self-destruct sequence, but the controls had been replaced with a holographic message: "System compromised by Sentinel." "How?" Gextaller demanded. "How did you infiltrate our systems? How did you get past our defenses?" Young Jay smiled, and there was something terrible in that expression. "We've been inside your systems for 800 years. Every time you bought human technology, every time you captured human ships, every time you examined human computers, we left behind microscopic infiltration programs. You thought you were studying us, but we were studying you." The Korthak commander's forearms trembled with rage and fear. You've been planning this for centuries?" "We've been hoping we wouldn't need to use these plans," Young Jay corrected. "We genuinely wanted to be your friends. But you made your choice when you decided to murder our children for entertainment." Similar scenes were playing out across the galaxy. On the Vorthak crystal worlds, their proudest warriors found themselves fighting human soldiers who moved like ghosts and struck like lightning. The Vorthak had spent millions of years perfecting their crystal technology, but human weapons cut through their defenses like they were made of paper. The gaseous Newmans discovered that their ability to turn poisonous was useless against humans. Wearing environmental suits that existed partially outside normal spacetime, their floating cities were surrounded by human ships that could appear and disappear at will, making them impossible to target. But the most shocking discovery was what happened when aliens tried to use their most advanced weapons against human forces. Planet-cracking missiles simply vanished when fired at human ships. Gravity weapons that could crush entire fleets had no effect on human armor. Energy beams that could melt asteroids were absorbed by human shields and redirected back at their targets. On the Zephyrian underwater cities, War Admiral Kethmoros watched his greatest battle fortress being torn apart by human soldiers who moved through water like they were flying through air. The humans weren't using vehicles or breathing apparatus. Their technology had simply made them immune to the crushing pressure and toxic environment of the deep ocean. "This is impossible," Kethmoros screamed at his tactical officers. "Our intelligence reports said humans were weak. They said human technology was primitive." One of his officers, Lieutenant Velsharix, was staring at a holographic display showing human tactical capabilities. "Sir, these readings, according to this data, humans have had faster-than-light travel for over 800 years. They've had energy manipulation technology for 700 years. They've had matter-phasing technology for 600 years. That's impossible. We've been monitoring human technology for centuries." "Sir," Velsharix said quietly, "I think they've been letting us monitor exactly what they wanted us to see. This says that every piece of human technology we've ever examined was deliberately made to look primitive. They wanted us to underestimate them." Kethmoros felt his tentacles go cold. Why would they do that? The answer came from every communication system in the fortress simultaneously. Sentinel's voice filled the underwater city with words that made every Zephyrian present understand the terrible mistake their civilization had made. "You asked why we would pretend to be weak," Sentinel said. "The answer is simple. We hoped that, if you didn't see us as a threat, you might eventually see us as friends. We spent 8 centuries trying to prove that different species could coexist peacefully." The voice paused, and somehow the silence was more frightening than words. "But you chose to see our patience as weakness. You chose to see our diplomacy as cowardice. You chose to attack our children and broadcast their deaths as entertainment. You forced us to stop pretending." Back on the Korthak homeworld, High Counselor Vexthis sat in his ruined palace, watching as his empire burned around him. Human ships filled the sky, their impossible technology making them look like gods of war. His proud military had been defeated in a matter of hours, and his people were surrendering en masse. With shaking claws, he finally accessed the data chip. that Ambassador Li Hyun had left at the Galactic Council so long ago. The file that had been ignored, mocked and forgotten. The data that appeared on his screen made his compound eyes go wide with horror. The file contained 8 centuries of human restraint protocols, detailed analyses of every alien military capability, complete schematics for weapons that could manipulate time, space, and matter itself, battle plans that showed how humanity could have conquered the entire galaxy at any point in the last 800 years. But most terrifying of all were the records of human debates about what to do with their overwhelming technological superiority. Generation after generation of human leaders had argued about whether to reveal their true capabilities. The debates had gone on for centuries, with the peaceful faction always winning, until now. The final entry in the file was a simple message. "We tried to warn you. We tried to be your friends. We tried to find another way. You chose this path by harming our children. Now you understand why Earth warned the galaxy we were holding back." Vexthis realized that humanity had been holding back for 8 centuries, not because they were weak, but because they were strong enough to show mercy. They had genuinely wanted to share the galaxy with other species as equals. But the galaxy had rejected that offer. The galaxy had chosen to see humanity's restraint as an invitation to commit genocide. The war ended not with a final battle, but with complete surrender. Every major alien civilization simultaneously broadcast the same message. We surrender unconditionally to humanity. We request mercy. The response came from every human ship, every human station, every human world at the same time. Mercy will be considered. Your species will be placed under human protection. Your aggressive capabilities will be permanently disabled. Your future actions will be monitored. Any further attacks on innocent beings will result in immediate consequences. This is not conquest. This is guardianship. We did not want this responsibility, but you have forced it upon us. In the ruins of the Galactic Council chambers, human engineers installed a new sign in every known language. The message was simple, but it would be remembered for millennia. Earth remembers New Geneva. Choose wisdom. Lieutenant Colonel Hong. Min-Su read the sign one final time before leaving the chamber. The galaxy had learned what happened when you pushed humanity too far. Now they would learn what it meant to live under the protection of a species that had spent 8 centuries learning to be merciful. The children of New Geneva would never be forgotten, and the galaxy would never again mistake human kindness for human weakness.